Yeah. We'll give Jan a quick minute. There he is. We couldn't start without you. All right. Is everybody ready? All right. With that, we will call to order the Town of Gilbert's Planning Commission study session for Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. First up is going to be DR 24-38, signature at Santan Village. And Mr. Keith Newman, take us away.
All right, it's on. Vice Chair Bianchi, members of the commission, good evening. So, as you stated, I'm going to present to you signature at Santan. I don't know. Okay. Awesome. Let's see. Oh, echo's still there. Hello. Testing. I'll let you guys enjoy my the water tower background I have there for a minute. I meant silos, excuse me. You're right. Okay. And the clicker. Yeah. Oh, there it is. Or will it work? There we go. Okay. All right. So the project that I have for you tonight for the study session, I believe it's the only item, is the signature at Santan Village, a design review case for it. So we wanted to present this case to you tonight as an introduction, as we have a fairly fast review time frame that we're pushing for to get. We're going to try and get this project before you for final consideration for the month of June. So we have a pretty fast track on this one. So we at least wanted to get before you tonight and introduce the project and get some preliminary feedback and some preliminary input. Just keep in mind that we have not finished the first review. By the time the staff report was written, we had just barely started the first review. So I don't have tonight any major concerns or really any concerns to present toward you for items that we need assistance with. So it's basically, I'm just going to provide you some general information on the project and kind of provide you an introduction to the project. As you can see on the aerial map in front of you, the site, and I know it's turned funny, but north is to the right. This project is about 30 acres. It's 30.34 acres, and it's located to the north of the Living Spaces building, which is part of the original Crossroads Park planned area development, and part of a master plan that actually includes this site. This will basically be a continuation of that original master plan to the south. And we're right across from the Dick's Sporting Goods, and that big vacant field you can see. So the request tonight, it's just like I stated, a design review, just to get your input and your feedback and to introduce the project to you. So as far as the site plan, here is the conceptual version of the site plan I'm providing for you. The site plan with more details is in your packet, and I'm sure you've all seen that. It's 30.4 acres, as I've stated. The total, you have 11 total buildings on the site, totaling about 326,000 square feet of retail and commercial space. There's 6 different parcels that the applicant or the developer is going to be creating on this site. You've got parcels A through F, and I've got the acreages on here for you, how large they are. The largest one is parcel D, and of course parcel E, and those have 119,000 and 106,000 square feet. One of them is, as of now, it's a commercial type retail, a large sporting goods type retailer in parcel D. And then we have parcel E is a long inline retail shop with building with 5 tenants in it. And then parcel F is a grocery store. And you probably have seen on the elevations which brands those are. So that's the site plan, and I'll go back to that. The site is bordered by Santan Village Parkway to the east and Coronado Road to the north, which kind of tails off to the west, and there's some apartments and things like that. The site is surrounded by, obviously, I've talked about living spaces to the south, the existing commercial development, and then to the west and to the north, you have some existing single-family homes that have been there for quite some time. So as stated before, this is part of the Crossroads PAD that's been in effect on this site since 1999. It includes Santan Village across the street, that shopping center, and all that some of the area, all Top Golf, all the way to Ray Road. It's all part of the same PAD. The landscape plan, I just wanted to show you that really quick. You have 23% landscaping on the site, and you can see this design. I wanted to show you this design because it shows the site, what it will look like with the trees and the parking lot islands and the buffers and the buffers to the single-family residential to the north and to the west. They'll have a significant amount of landscaping. This plan doesn't do it justice as far as how much landscaping they're actually going to really have to buffer this project from single-family residential. And then obviously the street frontages along Santan Village Parkway and Coronado will be densely landscaped as well. But as far as the development is concerned, I'm going to go back to the site plan, see if it'll let me. Whoop, that's too fast. So you have, I talked about the inline shops and the grocery store and the sporting goods store, but along Santan Village Parkway you have a series of retail buildings. You have I believe it's 2 or 3 drive-through restaurants, and then you have a few other pads. One's a couple financial type of institutions. You have a couple other sit-down restaurants, and then another small building where the letter A is that shows, I think there's 4 or 5 suites in that building as well. So you've got a good mix on this site of shops and restaurant pads and a couple of quick serve type restaurants, and then the larger retailers and the inline shops and a grocery store. So the site has an overall really good balance and mixture of commercial and retail uses. And you can see all the parking. It's not right up along Santan Village Parkway or Coronado for the most part. It's set back in between, in the middle of the building clusters to provide plenty of parking and access to each of the buildings and the suites. So as far as the design of the buildings, if it'll let me go there. The design of the buildings, desert earth tone type colors, a lot of obviously main building materials consisting of stucco and brick, There's some metal elements, some awnings and canopies, and some of the screening on top of the roof. There's some different types of block and some stone on these buildings. Very similar to the living spaces development to the south, excuse me. We feel these buildings will complement that portion of the development quite well. All the buildings are flat roof. There's no pitched roofs or gable type, hip roof type buildings in this development, all flat roof, and all earth tone colors. So I'm just gonna flip through these. You'll see some standard 2D elevations, and then also you'll see some perspectives in here. So this is just block A. This is just a strip of retail buildings. This is 4 suites in this building. And this is a nice little pretty picture, a nice perspective. I love these perspectives. To show you, give you an idea of what these buildings will look like. I also failed to mention there's going to be some faux type of wood paneling as well on some of the building elevations. So here's a different view of it, just to give you a flavor of what these tenant and retail shops and pad restaurants type buildings will look like. Here's block A, another portion of it, another building. This is a restaurant building, obviously. Here's that building in perspective view. Nice patio, a lot of glass, stucco, some faux wood and things like that on this building. Here's another view of it. I'm just going to flip through these. Another restaurant pad building. Give you a good idea here. And this building looks like it's some type of jewelry store. And this is in block B, which is a little bit further to the south. And here's a bank. So we're still in the process of reviewing these elevations as well. So this one, we're going to get a more colored version coming at the next review that you'll be able to see that in color. So all flat roofs. Here's another restaurant type building. This one should have a drive-through. And then here's a financial institution. Here's that one in perspective. I love the car sitting in front of that. Another building, block C, building 3. So you can see how all these buildings complement each other. And then we have block D, which is this much taller Dick's House of Sport building. You'll notice that this building's about 40 feet tall at the roof line, and it obviously goes higher than that at the tower element and some of the parapet walls. This is along that north property boundary. It's set back at least 100 feet away from the residence, which is required. And so they have that element. And then there's a field area. You'll notice to the right is a field area, and you got about a 30-something foot tall fence, I can't remember off the top of my head, that kind of surrounds a field where they will be using that area to test. People can run around a track, they can put the shoes on and test their running shoes. They can go out there and throw a football around, kick a soccer ball, what have you, to test equipment, sporting goods that they may want to buy. So this is a concept that they have mostly in the eastern United States that they're proposing to bring to this site. And then here's block E, portion of the longer retail buildings. And then block E again with additional tenants, and I'll show you these in perspective so you can get a little more context. A lot of stone, stucco. A lot of movement in the walls. We're pretty satisfied so far with what we're seeing on these elevations. Okay, here's a 2D rendering. And this is the grocery store building. You can see that it's very similar to the rest of the buildings as well. And obviously the designs do vary from building to building. So, okay, so those are the elevations. That pretty much concludes my brief overview and the introduction of this project. So now I'd like to open it up to you as a commission to provide potentially any input that you have on the elevations and on the overall site design. So I open it up to you guys for any questions.
Thanks, Keith.
welcome.
Any questions or feedback for staff? Commissioner Gage?
Thank you, Chair. Acting Chair. Keith, I'm just curious, why the big rush to get this pushed through?
Vice Chair Bianchi, Commissioner Gage. So the applicant is pushing forward with this so that they can meet deadlines for system development fees, so they can remain grandfathered into the current fee schedule. Whereas June 1st, if they don't get site plan approval, the system development fees will be changing. So they want to be grandfathered into the old fee schedule.
Anyone else?
Have they
Commissioner
gotten any, have they gotten any public feedback, any input from the public?
Vice Chair Bianchi, Commissioner Everett. So we haven't gotten that far. This is just, we're early on in the design review process. We have not reached out to the public yet concerning this project. That will happen as we get closer to the final hearing in June. And the applicant will be required to send out public notices to all property owners within 300 feet and all HOAs within 1,000. So that will happen in another month or so. And then we'll find out who comments and who doesn't. So that will be forthcoming.
Anyone else? Feedback? Commissioner Davis?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Keith, I guess one of the questions I have, it looked like a couple of the buildings as you were going through seemed to have a pretty different palette than the rest, Dick's being one of them, and then there was a restaurant pad. Is it just a rendering thing, or, I mean, not that everything has to match, but I was curious if the bricks that they're using, that kind of thing, and what kind of compatibility we have between all of the pads, or are some of them just going with a very different palette?
Vice Chair Bianchi, Commissioner Davis, we're still trying to assess that. In the review, I haven't gotten through all of the elevations yet to determine that level of compatibility from building to building. But it will be my goal to have all of the buildings look related to one another,
Right.
versus establishing their own design theme and their own color and materials palettes.
Right. And again, I don't think they all have to match each other
Right.
exactly, but I think there needs to be some nod to each other in
Yeah.
materials or forms or something like that. Also, some of the buildings have a ton of play in the wall plane, and some of them don't so much. And I know some have a more simplistic design, like what you have in the bottom right corner. I just want to make sure we have some of that play in the wall planes. We don't just end up with any boxes, so that we actually get a little variation, not just in parapet height, but on that wall plane to create some interest and variety in materials and not just changing paint colors on the same wall. So as you're looking at it, that would just be one thing I'll be looking at. So that's it. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Commissioner Anderson?
Keith, thank you for the presentation. Question for you. In the packet that I have, I don't know if it's on anybody else's packets, but on one of the blow-ups of the preliminary site plans of the EPS drawings, there's a few comments on here along Coronado Drive. It's over by, I think it's pad 4. One of them says, entries are not allowed in tapers. And then there's another comment, driveway needs to align with driveway to the north. And then the third comment is, must be 220 feet minimum between driveways. Are those staff comments? Or what are those comments? Are they being addressed? Are they valid comments?
Vice Chair Bianchi, Commissioner Anderson. Yeah, those are comments. I meant to delete the comments because we're not ready to release comments, but they were accidentally put on the plans. But as far as that's neither here nor there. The comments that are there are valid comments, and the applicant is working right now to try and address those comments. We've let them know already concerning those traffic engineering standards. So that's something that we're going to be working through with the applicant, and we haven't finalized all that yet. So you'll see potentially some that entrance potentially moving a little bit further to the west to try and meet our traffic engineering standards as far as the separation from 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 the corner, and also for the driveway to line up a little bit better with the driveway to the north that is for the apartment complex to the north. So those are things we're still working on.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Yep.
Anyone else? Commissioner Gage?
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm still back on this approval dates thing. So if they need to be approved by June, is it June 1st or July 1st for the new fees?
Vice Chair Bianchi, Commissioner Gage, it'd be June.
So that would mean we're going to hear this and make a decision next hearing, because the hearing after that would be June 5th.
Sorry, correction. I believe it's has to be by July 1st, excuse me.
Okay.
But so we're going to bring it to you in June
Okay.
for final consideration. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just
Sorry
going to
for
be
that.
really impressed if they could make all these changes
Yeah.
by then, and, because I could never get a project that fast, so I was going to see who their team was. But thank you.
Vice Chair Bianchi, Commissioner Gage, we are working with the developer on a revised a review schedule that we've all agreed to, so we're pushing forward.
Thank you.
Yes,
Anyone else? Yeah, Commissioner
Just
Fay.
one, Keith, so we haven't agreed. One of the problems, and I understand there's times I've had to rush projects forward and do some crazy things to meet timelines, but it also means we're not seeing the whole packet, which means if we do have an objection, it blows the schedule up out of the, there'll be factors that we're not seeing, we're seeing for the first time when it comes forward next time. So,
Vice Chair Bianchi, Commissioner Fay, the plans and things they've provided are pretty detailed.
okay.
So I don't think there will be any surprises or any additional details that you're not seeing tonight. It'll be very, very similar with some small tweaks and changes, but I don't believe there'll be anything major that will shock you when it comes back in June.
Good, super.
All right. Anyone else? So Keith, I did have a couple of questions. The landscape buffer, especially to the residential to the west, did I read in the staff report, is that a 40-foot buffer that they've got there?
Oop, wrong direction. Vice Chair Bianchi, that is correct.
Okay.
It's hard to see on this plan. You don't see the dimensions, but the landscape buffer along the whole western boundary and the whole northern boundary bordering single family, the landscape buffer is 40 feet, which is exactly what they have to the south for the living spaces portion of the development.
Okay.
The actual building setback is 75 feet.
And there'll be a drive aisle or
That's correct.
deliveries or things like that? Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to see too. Yeah, there's a drive aisle in between the landscaping setback and the buildings
Okay,
as well.
And that's all around. Okay, good.
That's correct.
And
And-
then, has the applicant shared with you, are they looking to do this in a single phase or multi-phase, or have they shared that with you as far as maybe getting at least the landscaping or thoroughfares in, or the streetscape?
Vice Chair Bianchi, it's our understanding that it will be a single phase.
Okay, very good. I think my initial thoughts overall, I think the elevations, colors, and the designs look good. I think it's a modern appearance. I think there's a variety of designs shown. The one thing I definitely look at with these, especially when it backs up to that residential, is that there's an adequate landscape buffer there, especially if we've got deliveries or trash enclosures and things like that. That's definitely one thing I look for. So hopefully there's enough mitigation here that staff's comfortable. But I understand Commissioner Fay's concern on the timing. So yeah, if you guys are still working on first review comments, it looks like it'll be a quick turnaround time on this. Anything else from the commission? No? All right. With that, thank you, Keith. We will move on to discussion of regular meeting agenda. It's pretty straightforward tonight. Anyone have any issues? The only item on consent is item number 6, the DR case for Clyde Capital. Does anyone have any issues or concerns and want to take that off consent? No? And leave the regular public hearing non-consent calendar as is? All right, simple enough. If there's nothing further, we'll adjourn the study session and take about a 5-minute break. Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the Planning Commission meeting for Town of Gilbert for April 3rd, 2024. With that, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, so please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and justice for all. All right, next up, can we begin with a roll call?
Commissioner Everett,
Present?
Commissioner DeGravina, Commissioner Simon,
Here.
Commissioner Gage,
Here.
Commissioner Fay,
Present.
Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yeah. Vice
Chairman Bianchi.
Here.
We have a quorum.
All right, very good. There were no changes to this evening's agenda as presented. So with that, would I like to have a motion for approval of the agenda?
Vice Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Simon, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so I've got a motion for approval by Commissioner Simon, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Could we all vote, please? All right, motion carries unanimously. What?
I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but.
Oh, it didn't come up? Oh, I saw blue checks, all right. All right, well, we got there anyway. Passes unanimously, very good. All right. Next up is communication from citizens. So at this time, members of the public may comment on matters within the jurisdiction of the town. The commission may not discuss the items that are not specifically identified on this evening's agenda. Therefore, pursuant to state law, action taken as a result of public comment will be limited to directing staff to study a matter, respond to any criticism, or scheduling the matter for further consideration. Is there anyone here this evening out there that would like to speak on a matter not on this evening's agenda? All right. Seeing none, we will go ahead and move on to our public hearing consent calendar. All items, or I should say the item tonight, listed are considered the public hearing consent calendar. The commission may, by a single motion, approve any number of the items where, after opening the public hearing, no person requests the item to be removed from the consent calendar. In such a request is made, the commission shall then withdraw the item from public hearing consent calendar for the purpose of public discussion and a separate motion. Other items on the agenda may be added to the consent calendar and approved under a single motion. With that, I will open the public hearing and discuss the consent calendar, which is all comprised of DR 23-160 Clyde Capital Hamilton Court this evening. Does any commissioner have any questions, concerns? No? All right. With that, I will close the public hearing, bring it back for possible motion.
Vice Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda, including number 6, DR 23-160, Clyde Capital Hamilton Court.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Very good. So I've got a motion for approval from Commissioner Simon, seconded by Commissioner Fay. All those in favor, please vote. All right. Consent calendar passes unanimously. Moving on to the public hearing non-consent items this evening. The non-consent public hearing items will be heard at an individual public hearing and will be acted upon by the commission by separate motions. During the public hearings, anyone wishing to comment in support or in opposition to a public hearing item may do so. If you wish to comment on a public hearing item, you must fill out a public comment form, which are located in the back, the yellow forms in the back of the room. Please indicate the item number which you wish to be heard, and then once the public hearing is closed, there will be no further public comment unless requested by a member of the commission. So with that, we will introduce concurrently GP 22-16 and Z 22-16, the lumberyard. With that, I will open up the public hearing and introduce Kristen Devine. Kristen.
All right, good evening, Commission. The case I have before you tonight is for a rezoning and a minor general plan amendment for the lumberyard. Following my presentation, the applicant also has a presentation. The site is located west of the Heritage District, northeast of Neely and Cullimber, and is bordered by industrial, multifamily, and public facility and institution zoning. The applicant is proposing to rezone the property to develop a multifamily community. The request before you tonight includes a minor general plan amendment from industrial to residential, 25 to 50 dwelling units per acre, and a rezoning from general industrial to multifamily high with a planned area development for a reduction in open space. The site is approximately 9.25 acres and is currently classified as industrial. The applicant is proposing a minor general plan amendment to change the site from industrial to residential, 25 to 50 dwelling units per acre. And again, the applicant is requesting a rezoning of the 9.25 acres from general industrial to multifamily high. The site is located within the long-range planning area within the Heritage District redevelopment plan In that plan, the preferred land use at the lumberyard site is multifamily, parks, retention, and transit. The proposed lumberyard development falls in line with this land use and will be beneficial to the Heritage District by providing a variety and density of housing within and around the downtown area. Although the site is just outside of the Heritage District, the existing pedestrian bridge provides a pedestrian-friendly entry point to the downtown area that lets out just north of the site. The proposal has gone through a variety of stages before finally reaching this point. When the submission first came in 2022, it was 27 acres with 668 multifamily units proposed at a density of 50 dwelling units per acre. The development plan has since evolved and is currently proposing only 285 units with a total of 30.8 dwelling units per acre. This has been reduced even since the study session in January, where the applicant was proposing 35.8 dwelling units per acre. The units will be located within 3 buildings. One building will face Neely Street and will be 3 stories tall. Another building will be placed at the rear of the site adjacent to the District Lofts community, and it will be 4 stories tall. The final and largest building will be placed central to the site and will also be 4 stories tall. That building will be, it will surround a pool and amenity areas. The development will be accessed from Neely, and parking will be located throughout the site, with garages being located along the northern and southern property lines, providing an additional buffer from the adjacent industrial uses to the south. The applicant is proposing 444 parking spaces, which is the exact number required for the site. There will be approximately 71 garage spaces, 214 covered parking spaces, and 159 uncovered parking spaces. Seen here are some conceptual renderings that the applicant has shared with us. These renderings are not part of the review at this time, and they're just supplemental. With the rezoning, the applicant is proposing a PAD with 1 deviation. The requested deviation is for a reduction in open space from 40% to 35%. Staff is generally supportive of the deviation request. Right. And since this project is located within 1,000 feet of the Heritage District, I brought it to study sessions with both the Redevelopment Commission and the Planning Commission. The Redevelopment Commission study session was held on December 20th, 2023. Some of the feedback provided by the commission was that they appreciated the 3-story building being street side instead of a 4-story building like the other 2. They had significant concerns with the site being underparked at the time and stated that the parking did need to be met on site. The commission had also suggested that the applicant look into possibly utilizing rooftop amenities to make up some of the open space deficit. The study session for Planning Commission was held on January 3rd, 2024. Feedback from that session was similar to that of the Redevelopment Commission. There were significant concerns with the site being underparked, and it was stated also that parking must be met on site. The commission was open to the idea of rooftop amenities for open space, but was overall supportive of the reduction in open space as long as the parking was met. Right. 5 neighborhood meetings have been held on this project. Questions and concerns from the public regarding the project have included density, proximity to the adjacent industrial, parking, and traffic concerns. Staff has received 2 formal opposition emails from the public at the start of the project when the proposal was 27 acres. Those are included in your staff reports. Since that time, staff has not received any additional emails, but has had multiple conversations with the applicant who brought concerns forward on behalf of the neighboring community of Neely Ranch to the southwest of the proposed lumberyard site. The concerns from the community include traffic impacts, parking, and the use of Aviary Way by non-residents. The community brought forward some suggestions to the applicant regarding the possibility of closing Aviary Way. The applicant brought these concerns to us, and we discussed the options of a dead end, a cul-de-sac, pork chop, or gating Aviary Way, along with some slowing mechanism ideas as well. On February 15th, 2024, a meeting was held between the applicant, town staff, and representatives of the Neely Ranch HOA. During the meeting, we discussed the opportunity to close off Aviary Way, but ultimately town staff had determined that the dead end, cul-de-sac, pork chop, and gating options were not feasible. The primary reason for this decision is that there is not enough space to accommodate a cul-de-sac on Aviary Way while meeting current standards. Additionally, the options would significantly impact emergency response times to that area, not only to the proposed multifamily development, but to the industrial uses that are also located north of Aviary on Neely Road. Slowing mechanisms such as additional speed humps or chicanes may continue to be discussed, but these too have a negative impact on emergency response times, and staff is not generally supportive of them due to public safety concerns. Neely Street connecting over the railroad tracks has also been brought up to staff multiple times. The railroad has a policy at this time not to allow additional at-grade crossings without the removal of 3 existing at-grade crossings. It's within the town's long-term plan to connect Neely across the tracks with the Vaughn ventilator, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. I would also like to note that at the continuance hearing last month, 12 comment cards were received in opposition to the project, with many of those residents choosing to also speak out in opposition at the hearing. All right, and with that, that concludes my presentation. Staff recommends approval of the general plan amendment and rezoning subject to the conditions found in your staff report, and I am available for any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Kristen. Does anyone have any questions for staff? Commissioner Simon, please.
Thank you, Kristen, for the presentation. I just have 2 quick questions. With regards to density, my understanding is they're looking at 30.8 dwelling units per acre in a 25 to 50 potential. So they're on the lower end of that multifamily high is what they're looking at. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, so Vice Chair Bianchi, Commissioner Simon, that is correct.
Okay. Second question that I have is with regards to the general plan, my understanding is that this was initially slated in the general plan to be multifamily. Is that correct?
So Chair Simon, Commissioner Simon, it is in the redevelopment plan for the Heritage District that was put out in 2018 as being multifamily,
Okay.
but it's currently industrial in the general plan.
Correct. No, I understood it's industrial now, but the vision was for at some point it was going to become multifamily.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone else? No?
Oh, sorry.
Commissioner Everett?
What kind of pedestrian connectivity does it have to the Heritage District? I think along the tracks there's some connectivity, but what kind of distance are we looking at there?
Sure. So Vice Chair Bianchi, Commissioner Everett, the only pedestrian connectivity that there is currently is going to be that existing pedestrian bridge. You can kind of see it just under the private street. It goes over the tracks and lets out at the north of that lot 375. And that currently exists in the Heritage District now. Originally, the 27-acre plan did include that lot 375, so the pedestrian bridge led out onto their potential property, but that has since changed.
Anything else, Commissioner Everett? No? Yeah, Commissioner Anderson.
Kristen, thank you for the presentation. Just a quick question on the stipulations. Stipulation D, is that common for developments? I'll read it to you. It's developer shall create a property owners association for the ownership, maintenance, landscaping, improvements, and preservation of all common areas and open space areas and landscaping within the right-of-ways. So what exactly does all that entail? I've never seen a deviation like that before. Is that pretty common for these types of developments?
So Vice Chair Bianchi, Commissioner Anderson, that was one of the standard stipulations that are in our ordinance template.
Okay, all right.
So I'm not sure if maybe
No, if that's
another
what-
department might be able to
if
touch
it's
on it a little more,
standard, what
but
you guys are doing, that's fine. So that's all the right-of-way areas that are going to be responsible for the maintenance and improvements of all that,
adjacent to their property.
adjacent just to the property? Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Yeah, Commissioner Gage?
Thank you. This project was originally going to be about 30 acres, and now it's 10. And I know the town was going to purchase some part of this for detention or park or whatever. Has that amount of land increased to make up, like, is the town now going to take 18 or 20 acres and this is the remaining 10? What's that plan look like?
Sure. So Vice Chair Bianchi, Commissioner Gage, originally it was 27 acres from this applicant. The town purchased, is trying to purchase 10 acres for a retention basin, which is right off the tracks at that northwesternmost corner of lot 375 that you're seeing here. That's going to be a future retention basin. The applicant came to us a short time later and asked if we were interested in purchasing additional 8 acres, which I believe we are also pursuing. So we'll be purchasing 18 acres as the town, and the remainder will be this multifamily community.
Thank you. Anyone else? So, Kristen, the one question I had was for parking. So they are now, with this unit count, they are now meeting that requirement? And
They-
are they right at requirement?
They are, Vice Chair Bianchi, they are right at requirement, 444 spaces.
And so if Neely will be the only way to get to and from this development, I'm assuming any of the existing industrial and related traffic all utilizing Neely now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's it. I can say that for the applicant. Thank you. Anything else for staff? Okay, thank you, Kristen. With that, would the applicant like to come up and make a presentation or comment? Mr. Baugh?
Red? Usually red means stop, so I apologize. Adam Baugh, 2525 East Arizona, Biltmore Circle. Thank you for your time. Maybe the first time I ever get to recite the name William Bobby Gilbert, but when 1902 came around and some of the first tracts of land were dedicated and created what is now the town of Gilbert, it happened right in this area. Particularly along the rail lines, because the rail line was instrumental to a post office and transporting hay, among other things, and it became our central commerce hub. And it was the impetus, the initiation, the origination of the town of Gilbert. And when I moved here in 2003, nobody went to downtown Gilbert. And Gilbert itself has proven to be successful in the redevelopment and creating new energy and enthusiasm and opportunities in downtown Gilbert. It's the beauty of what it is today because of their strategic vision. But recognizing the importance of that isn't just the frontage along Gilbert Road, but was creating a plan that goes with bookends on the north and south and east and the west, including this property here. So I'm grateful for the foresight that they had and the presentation by Kristen, because as an applicant, we look to those policies, those guidelines, and those plans as direction on how to proceed. Now, what I wanted to share is this is the property today. And the reason why it looks like this is because it was next to a rail line, and the town didn't have a lot of industrial back then, but it made a lot of sense to put industrial next to a rail line back then. But as this area has filled out, and it has residential to the west, and residential to the south, and residential to the east, and this thriving downtown area that needs more residential within proximate distance, the town has realized that the heart of GI here doesn't really make sense today like it did previously. And so when you think of all the different uses that can be in the general industrial zoning district, it's your most intensive district in the town of Gilbert. But the most intensive district might not be best located next to its greatest attractive gem, which is the town Heritage District area. And more importantly, there's no height restriction in the GI either. And I think recognizing what those impacts could be long-term, the town was wise in coming up with a plan that looked more appropriate in scale to the long-term vision of the town of Gilbert, which is including multifamily on our piece, which is recognized in yellow with the arrow, and then retention, green space, open space, park in the area directly north of us. When we started that plan, we didn't necessarily see that full vision. We knew we needed to provide some multifamily, but we actually were leading with a single-family plan for the most part on the south part of this project, with a little bit of commercial on the north end next to where that pedestrian bridge would be, and then these two multifamily components. The town reminded us this plan is not in harmony with our redevelopment vision, plan, and intention that's been in place for the last 6 years. And the opportunity came up that we could facilitate two things at the same time. Our opportunity to create some multifamily here and the town's opportunity to create what they see in a long-term vision for this area. And so this plan has gotten skinnier than what it was before, with 803 units to 282 units. And it's gotten skinnier since you last saw it at Planning Commission previously. It's thinner than what the Redevelopment Commission saw. Part of that is a reflection of the feedback we heard. I think the most important feedback from the two committees, RDC and yours, was do not cut the parking. And I wish there was a mechanism for that, because we did a parking study and we felt like it was supportive of what we need. But at the end of the day, we can understand that the priority we've heard from you is provide the required parking. Being that we're located next to what will be a future retention park area, it seemed more practical to slightly reduce our open space a little bit, recognizing that potential proximity to that outdoor amenity in the future. But what we've done in consideration of that is lower our heights along Neely Street to 3 stories, and then shifted our greater heights to the center and to the east side. And as a result, we're able to satisfy all the required parking. We have not yet filed a DRB, but our DRB is ready to go in the door, subject to this outcome of this hearing today. So this is be the renderings that we showed previously, and that will be moved forward with in our DRB package. And this is the view, at least on the right side of that screen, along Neely Street. Just for some comparative between the two of them, it's not only a significant reduction in size, but in unit counts, in building height, and in overall trips, which I think is one of the biggest factors that you're likely going to hear from some residents today, is about trips, how the trips work and how the trips may cut through their neighborhood. So as with me today is Dean. Dean's with our traffic engineer. And I'd love to give you a lot of the facts on the traffic engineering, but I'd really just have to fake my way through it because he's very capable and I'm less capable. So what I'll share today is what he's been able to evaluate with his proposal, recognizing that Neely Street is designed for 8,400 trips based on the type of collector classification it is, but the actual number of trips presently is only about 1,400 today, and when you add in our trips, we're about 2,699. So Neely Street has an abundance of capacity to support the volumes of our development today. But I think the thing that's most important for the neighbors is what's the impact on Aviary Way? And they experience it uniquely and probably different than I do as just the applicant. But one thing that we wanted to make sure we evaluated was the basis of facts. And so in December, we put down a 24-hour traffic count so we could actually analyze which direction the trips were going and how many total trips were occurring in a day. And based on that, it showed 240 daily trips. And recognizing that a local street residential is intended to carry about 2,600, the 240 is about 9% of the volume that roadway is designed for. Now, I can certainly appreciate the maybe annoyance that can exist when people who don't live in the neighborhood drive through the neighborhood. And I think with the roadway construction on Elliott Road and Cooper Road, that's probably been more frequent than in the past. But when I look at the numbers that are on the December 7th date, they tell, I think, more of the factual story, even if I myself maybe don't experience the same way that they do. What I am appreciative, though, that I've heard from this community is the HOA has been willing to, at different times, try to help solve it. And I think we've been willing to help solve what we could as well. I think ultimately they'll be outside of their control, and our control are the town's engineering standards. And so I think the HOA really was a fair actor in trying to figure out ways to maybe give up some of their open space tract along the connection of Neely Street and Aviary Way, perhaps to put a cul-de-sac bulb on there. And we looked at ways that we could even maybe do something like a pork chop. But at the end of the day, I can appreciate that the streets and transportation part of the town of Gilbert has engineering wisdom, experience, and knowledge that might provide a more expert level of evaluation that I can't qualify myself for, and perhaps neither the HOA either. So while we proposed a pork chop design that could have allowed just emergency access vehicles only and solid waste, I think I respectfully defer to the professionals in the town who evaluate this. And I think my hunch is when they look at the volume of trips on Aviary Way, it might not merit the need to make changes, even though it may be perceived as more volume than others would desire. At the end of the day, what I most appreciate is in an infill parcel like this, and as conditions have changed from when it used to be industrial and that was the priority to now this thriving downtown area, the town has a desire to not just put more restaurants and more office and more retail, but to put residents proximate to that to support and buoy those things. And so when they set forth a redevelopment plan like this, I think it's been prudent and impressed upon us to use it as a guiding tool as we design our plan. So at the end of the day, we've been able to reduce our density down significantly in the beginning, and again since the last meetings. We've been able to bring our project more in line with the redevelopment district and those plans to the area, and create opportunities for the town to fulfill their long-term vision here. At the end of the day, I know that there will be people who don't desire this, and I think sometimes the status quo is hard to see change. But what I see us implementing is precisely what the town has had on their long-term vision, and I hope to be able to execute it with your recommendation today. So with that, I'll end my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Bob. Any questions for the applicant? No? None? All right. Adam, the first one I had was just, it always seems to come back to parking with me.
Yeah.
And if we're just on site here, one of the things I noticed in the staff report was it says your average unit is 825 square feet, and you're providing a parking space for each bedroom. So assuming that it's larger units, I would assume there could be multiple people in one or two bedrooms. So I'm wondering, what would be the plan for overflow parking if we're just meeting what's on site there?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the applicant should not be punished for meeting the parking requirements. And particularly, the town just went through and updated their requirements, and they could have added greater requirements, and they didn't. And they could have given some tools to reduce parking requirements that could have applied to us, and they didn't, and we didn't avail ourselves of that. But I think trying to meet the requirement was most important. If there was a need to have some type of overflow parking, I guess Neely Street could be an opportunity for on-street parking. It is a dead end, so it's not like parking on there north of Avery Airway will impact anybody else because it's a road to nowhere at this point in time. But we did do a parking study. It was provided to staff previously, and actually the parking study showed that we have less of a parking demand than what the code requires, but at a minimum, we have to meet what the code necessitates.
And then I guess another question I had that just came up, it may be, if I have to ask staff, please defer to them. So on condition F, it says the maximum number of dwelling units shall be limited to the maximum allowed under the general plan. So is that based off of the land use category, was that 25 to 50 or the?
Right.
So could we increase, or would you be allowed to increase the amount of units through this?
We wouldn't, because we're doing a PAD, and the PAD locks in a development plan. The development plan locks in the number of units. So short of me coming back and doing a PAD amendment, we couldn't increase the number of units. But I think what will likely happen is we may actually probably have it's possible we might have a bit of a reduction of our units as we think through what a future emergency access might look like. That may require a little bit of building adjustment, maybe a little bit of shrinking in order to fit the required emergency access. So if anything, I suspect will probably come down a little bit.
Okay, yeah, that could be welcome. Okay, thank you, Adam. Commissioner Gage.
Thank you. Adam, can you go back to the site plan really fast? It seems like you have an abundance of parking towards the east end of the site.
Yeah.
Is there enough parking on that west end of the site to accommodate the number of units there? I know everybody likes to park as close as they
Yeah.
can to their apartment and their friend's apartment, and it seems to me a lot of people will be walking the whole length of the development to get to those units along Neely.
Excellent question. A couple of things. The building along Neely is 3 stories. The buildings on the east end are 4 stories. So there's greater density in the middle and on the east side than there is on the west. So we'd want to shift more parking towards the middle east than we would on the west side. The other challenge is when you drive in from the north exit, you have to have room for a turnaround bulb in case somebody can't get through the gates. So if I was to put another row of parking, it actually would be a shorter run because it would run into the bulb versus me putting that row of parking on the east side where I can get the longer length of it. I think that's really the greatest factor in how we laid it out. There's not if I was to shift a row of parking to the west side of the building, I wouldn't be able to get the same amount of parking spaces because it would be pinched by the bulb.
Is parking allowed on Neely Street? And that might be a question for staff, but I'm just worried that will become a backup.
So
plan.
Are you like required parking?
No, like just,
Public parking's allowed.
okay.
Well, Kristen should clarify, but I believe we have to provide all our required parking per code on site. But
Right.
it doesn't prevent someone from parking on a public street, like a guest, for example, who may come. And if they can't find a space, I guess in theory, but I don't know if that's a warranted concern.
Hi, sorry. So per our traffic department, Neely is a collector street, which ultimately will have a bike lane if it doesn't already. So parking is not permitted along Neely.
Like I said,
Thank you.
parking's not permitted along Neely Street.
That's what I thought I heard you say.
And
Thank you.
would that be on both sides or just one side?
One moment. Sorry, playing telephone here. Yes, both sides of Neely. No parking.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commissioner Everett?
Yeah, one of the things that gives me pause is the traffic. And I think they do have a valid point about, if it's time when everybody's going to work, everybody's pulling out, and it's backed up on Neely, I could definitely see people going down Aviary. So it's not necessarily the number of trips, but the time periods where those trips are being made. Having kids myself, I would be concerned at those, those times when those trips would be in conflict with when kids are out playing. So I would think, I just don't know what the traffic analysis says in terms of, sorry. All right. In terms of what times they expect the greatest density of trips down, that could come down Aviary.
Understood. Do you want to talk about the peak times of apartment multifamily relative to other typical uses?
Well,
State your name for the record.
I'm Dean Chambers with Lokahi, and the AM peak hour trips generated are 112. The PM peak are 110. So that's actually a very low number for it. This is right on the verge of not even needing a study. It's that low of peak hour trips. So that it's incredibly low when you look at other collector roads.
Okay. I didn't know this isn't necessarily for the client, but in terms of other speed mitigation efforts, speed bumps are kind of out, but are there, choke points that could be introduced as well, just to kind of?
And those have been proposed, and if I think I have it correct, that was one of the options, was to do bulb outs at the intersection of Aviary and Neely, and that was rejected by staff.
Okay.
Hi again. We did discuss speed humps and chicanes, which is kind of like the choke points that you're referring to. There already are, I believe it's 6 speed humps on Aviary Way, so our fire team had a rough time agreeing with the idea of placing more, because then that slows down response times even more. Same with the chicanes. By adding chicanes in addition to the existing speed humps, you're slowing down response times. So they weren't overly supportive of the idea, but it can still be considered.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Commissioner Davis?
Commissioner Everett, I'd say
Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Bob.
we're open to all opportunities for calming traffic. You won't see us object to any idea. It's just, I think the engineering side has greater expertise than I do.
Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I guess I just wanted to note, I appreciate all of the efforts that you've put into looking at the traffic out at the site, because, what the neighborhood is experiencing is important. But one thing I wanted to note, and I'm sure you've looked at it, but whether if this stayed industrial, something else could develop here that could have just as large a traffic impact, or maybe more. Have you taken a look at what the traffic impacts would be if this didn't change over to residential? I'm assuming it could be more or the same as a multifamily.
Yeah, it depends on the nature of the use. If it's a crematorium, no, it doesn't.
Right, obviously.
You don't have that same impact. It really depends on the nature. But I will say, the question regarding traffic, whether we exist or the industrial stays the same, it's still the same question as far as neighbors are concerned, which is Aviary Way is a public street and can be used as the public decides to use it. And Neely Street, it works the same way. So I don't think it's a question of if it's our multifamily project that's creating the traffic volume. The traffic will exist either way because Neely's a dead end and you can't get in and out. I think the nature of the traffic actually might be a bit different. The size of vehicle, the frequency of vehicles. The thing about multifamily is, and I think some of you are aware of this, the reason why the numbers are low in the peak time is because for the most part, multifamily has a different dispersed traffic pattern through the day that's a little bit more regular and spread out as opposed to single-family homes, which is high-intensity AM peak and high-intensity PM peak. But with industrial, you have both the AM peak and the PM peak, but then you also, if you have a few shifts, you may have more overnight traffic or more late-night traffic or more early morning traffic. And so some of those can be employee vehicles, some of them could be box trucks or semi-trucks. And so I just think the nature of it is probably going to be a little bit more intensive than what you would have otherwise. But I don't think it changes the fact that the traffic pattern is what it is today, and it will be the same the way it is going forward. Aviary Way still exists now and will still exist that way.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, thank you, Mr. Bob. We'll
yes.
reserve the right to, do you?
I do
Commissioner
have a
Fay?
couple.
Looks like you're not off yet.
Sorry, Adam. Parking, I have no problem at all. You meet code as, I've not been shy about some of my criticisms of the code, but if an applicant meets code, that's what the code is for. To me, I do think you're going to have some problems with how heavily you've weighted things in the east side of your lot. I think but that's the management company's problem to deal with. I don't agree with your assessment that traffic numbers are smoother for multifamily. You're going to have a big dump in the morning of traffic leaving and going into Phoenix to work or going and I mean, it's not going to be of 2,700. You're not going to have 1,300 leaving between 7 and 8, but you're going to have it almost sounds like at this point, your peak hour is about 1/24th. It's not going to be 1/24th per hour. That said, I'm not supportive of any restrictions on the public roadways in the area. These roadways have more than enough capacity, and the fire department's right. We should not be restricting these type things easily, and especially if they've already got speed humps in there. I'm actually not in favor. I'm with the city's traffic engineering department of not being in favor of residential restrictions on those type of things. And then, Adam, we talked at one point about, and it might be worth talking a little bit about, you've got an emergency access to the north, which doesn't exist right now. And is that going to be a crash gate or a knockbox? Or?
Yeah. Well, as you'll notice, one of the conditions of the staff report requires us to be able to provide emergency access before we can move forward with the development. And as you know, we would love Union Pacific to just let us put an at-grade crossing, but the town cannot give up 3 other at-grade crossings somewhere else. It just creates a choke point. So your options are go under the rail line, build a bridge over the rail line, go east through District Lofts, go south through Industrial, or go north and catch what is considered the Phoenix Avenue alignment. In either scenario, however it's planned and designed, A, I have to solve that before I can move forward with any development. But B, I'd have to be able to provide a crash gate. Sometimes we'll have a Knox lock or something like that. But the reason why I think there's been some slowness and delay on our part is because of the necessity to comply with the fire code requirements. And I can't see them relaxing that as we go forward with our development, which is why I think at some point as we connect that emergency access point will likely result in some commensurate change in our units of density. Hopefully not, but I can see it happening.
Yeah, I wouldn't, I'm with the fire department. I wouldn't be in favor of relaxing that too much. And I understand why when it gets to be a headache, sometimes it's a real pain to connect that. But it looks like you've pulled a rabbit out of the hat on that one and may have found a connection that'll work. So if that works, that's far enough away from the main entrance in my mind to provide emergency access.
Yeah, it's very close to being resolved.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Fay. Thank you, Mr. Baugh. We'll reserve the right if we need to call you up or we need to have you respond to anything. So next up, public comments. So what we'll do is we'll call you up. I've got 3 forms to speak. If anyone else is here in attendance and would like to speak, the yellow forms are at the back of the room. Please feel free to bring that up to us and let us know that you want to speak. General rule is we'll give you 3 minutes. And all we ask is when you come on up, give us your name, your municipality of residence, and go from there. And first one up is Miss Sally Breyer. And I understand you've got some photos that town staff is going to bring up for you.
So do you have the photos for me, for the overhead? My name is Sally Breyer, and I live on Orchard Way in Neely Ranch. Okay. I have to apologize. My husband's the president of the HOA at Neely Ranch. I'm also serve on the board. I've served for the last 17 years there. We moved into that community for the purpose. The main reason was because there's nobody behind us. There was the riparian to the north of us. We had the lumber yard over on the east, and it was, like, okay, now we're in a place where apartments are not going to go, and here we are. I know I can't stop progress, but I do feel like even though we've met with the town about the roadway, that we weren't really given, we were told that it wasn't a big enough space to do a turnaround, even though we were willing to give up some of our green area for that. But I do not understand why it would not be feasible to do a one-way street that you can only go out onto Neely, and I cannot see how that would be a problem for fire to come in. The other option that maybe you would consider is to take out the speed bumps and then to make it a one-way street. Because the reason the speed bumps are there is that we had people coming through with just the lumber yard, and they were speeding through in the morning. And then also we had problems with them parking in our neighborhood, which I know we can't control that, but it was a problem. So that's the one thing I wanted to say. But we moved into this neighborhood for the open space, and now we're being faced with apartments. Just down the road on Cooper is the oh gosh, what is it? It's where all the landscapers go now, and the parts for vehicles. That is so much traffic on that road now, on Cooper Road. It's backed up. With the train, often it's very backed up. Okay, so we have some overheads. I'll see if I can figure this out. All right. So we did a drones of the use of the land, and you're aware that the lumberyard is surrounded by the riparian, which is the, oh, there it is in front of me. Okay, so there's it's saying the Moyers Contracting Hazardous Material, the equipment crane and rental storage, the railroad tracks. I just feel like as for a luxury apartment, that's not quite the views that I would be looking for. So I just wonder what the thought is on that. Obviously I'm opposed, I'm highly opposed, and there's no one in our neighborhood that is looking forward to this happening. And we understand that we can't stop the wheels of progress, but we really feel like there should be some sort of solution to keep the traffic from flowing through. It's going to flow through, and it's not going to be what we're looking at right now. It's going to be a lot worse down the road when these apartments come in, and who knows what else is going to happen in the future. All right. Thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Byer? All right, thank you. All right, next up is Dennis Harris, and he wishes to speak and is opposed to this item. Mr. Harris?
I'm a resident of Neely Ranch, and thank you for allowing us to have our input here. I guess I have a major concern with the traffic flow. That's my primary concern. I think you started that topic. I thought it was a good start, but I think the estimates they're using for these traffic flows, when you have a multi-dwelling unit of almost 300, to say that the traffic flow is only going to be in the low hundreds, especially during rush hour, morning, evening, it's totally unrealistic. And a single one-ended street with a traffic light, you're going to have hundreds of cars every morning, every evening. There's no way that single road could handle that kind of a flow. I guarantee you they're going to start running everything through Aviary, and they're not going to care how many kids live there. They're not going to care about the speed bumps. They don't now. It's been increased substantially because of the construction at Cooper and Elliott. They do the same thing now, and it's going to be considerably greater with that many dwelling units with only one outlet. Morning rush hour with a light at Elliott, there's no way you're going to get hundreds of cars through there without a huge backup. They're going to be looking for a better way, and the only other way is Aviary. We think we propose a good solution to try to stop them from coming down Aviary, and still there are ways to allow emergency access. Many other communities have dead-ended streets, but emergency access, and I think we could too. It's the traffic flow. Anybody with kids in there, I wouldn't want to be on that street. It's an exponential increase in traffic. So that's it. Thank you for the time.
All right. Next up, I've got Will Ramel, is opposed and does wish to speak. Mr. Ramel, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Rowell, thank you.
Take another look before you start the timer. Could we take a look at Mr. Baugh's original project proposal before the size was reduced?
Staff, if you can bring that up, if that's possible.
And I
Is that part of the points you want to make?
Yes, it is.
Okay. This one, sir?
No, the one previous
the
to that one,
original
it was
he had?
the full size.
I think you just had it. There.
Perfect,
there we go.
perfect,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Yeah, I don't speak nearly as eloquently as Mr. Baugh, but thank you for letting me speak. I respectfully disagree with staff's recommendation and ask that the board not rezone this area for high-density rental housing. My wife and I actually live in Artemina. We're about a mile from this property, but I think we share the concerns of those who live here. You know, one thing I think people are dancing around, the increased density itself, I think, drives all of the other concerns. Traffic, obviously, and I'm going to come back to that, increased burden on emergency responders, noise, and then whether it's perceived or real, more crime. I think in an empty lot, there's probably not a lot of crime going on, but again, that's neither here nor there. I have a few questions, I guess kind of bigger concerns with this. One would be, if this project goes forward, how would the town prevent these rental units from becoming some sort of short-term rentals? I mean, although you can make rules against that, enforcement typically takes time. Second question I have, and I don't like conspiracy theories, but when I look and see that parcel to the north, right by the railroad tracks, I can't help but wonder what a future board like this, what a future town council might want to put in there. When I squint my eyes, when I look at an apartment complex and open space and railroad tracks, there's one thing that jumps to mind more than anything else, and that's obviously commuter, some sort of light rail solution. I will applaud the project, I think it's going in the right direction. There's only about 282 units, too many at this point. Coming down to the question of numbers, you know, we heard a lot of numbers about traffic, about parking spots, 2,700 trips a day, 250 trips a day, whatever. I think the important number is maybe 1 to 5, the size of a family that could get squished into the pavement by traffic. Somebody walking in the morning with their kids, they're not paying attention. Somebody in a car is not paying attention, and lives change forever. And putting aside every other concern with progress and this or that, the traffic more than anything else. And my wife and I live a mile away. We won't have to see this apartment complex loom up above us. It's not our kids or pets that are going to be run over, but we still share those concerns. And I guess the very last thing I would have to say is when I look at this first proposal and I look at the updated proposal, I see a simple solution. I see beautiful single-family houses down there at the bottom. Why not just call it good with the lower half of this proposal? thank you for hearing me out. I hope that, one last thing I want to say, the most alarming thing I think I can hear from somebody in planning is that's going to be talking about what's going to be in a future project, what's going to be a retention basin, what's going to be a park, because there's no way to predict what's going to be in that space to the north. So thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Rowell. Is there anyone here this evening that still wishes to speak? All right. Seeing none, does the commission have any other questions for staff or for the applicant? No? Okay, Commissioner Simon.
A question for staff. Kristen, can you tell me what the process is that the town goes through with regards to the redevelopment commission and the redevelopment or the redevelopment plan? Does that go to voters or is that just by the plans, the town's plan? Is it clear what I'm asking? I'm kind of dancing around that, but.
Yeah, so Vice Chair Bianchi, Commissioner Simon, I'm going to defer to Sydney or Veronica, if that's okay?
Vice Chair, Commissioner Jan Simon. The redevelopment plan is something that would be adopted by council. And typically they're about a 10-year time frame, and they typically automatically expire at that time and then can be renewed if there's a desire by the council to do so.
Okay, so it's the town's, it's within the town's purview to look at where the town wants to be within that time period, line out a plan. Obviously, we know that that plan is flexible, but basically lay out a plan. And then the town council votes on and in essence ratifies that plan.
Vice Chair, Commissioner Simon, that's correct. The redevelopment plan lays out goals and a vision for a particular area once it's designated as a redevelopment area.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Mr. Baugh, did you have anything else you wanted to respond to from the comments?
Yes, I'll close with two things. Applicants, as they come to the town, look towards these plans to guide them. To me, the question really isn't so much about the land use, because this is the policy plan, this is the adopted plan, this is what's telling people when you come to the area, this is what should happen. And we're conforming with that in every regard. The second question really that seemed to come up most was traffic. And I don't think I'm the one to be able to confidently say what it is, and I don't know if this panel has that same level of expertise, except for maybe Mr. Fay, because he works for ADOT. But I do trust in the judgment of professional engineers, both in ours who put together the plan and the cities who evaluate that traffic plan. And to the extent when there's a concern regarding traffic, it's not showing in the expertise and the data of the applicant's representative or the towns related to this development. So I can certainly appreciate where the inconvenience might exist and the annoyance and the preference that Aviary Way be used exclusively only for the folks that live in the neighborhood. But the numbers don't show it being overly burdensome as otherwise stated. And I certainly just rather trust the judgment of those folks when answering that kind of question. So my own personal opinion, for what it's worth, I do get 30 seconds of rebuttal, so that's what I share. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. With that, I will close it, public hearing, and bring it back to the commission for comments and a possible motion. Does anybody have any comments or feedback? No one wants to be brave enough? Commissioner Simon?
So I mean, my questions are quite pointed, and I'm going to try to eloquently state this as best as I can, in fear of probably offending people. And that being said, with respect to community members, I very much appreciate you coming out, and your voices are heard. And please know that we don't come in with any preconceived notion on which direction we want to go. Looking at this piece of property, looking at the redevelopment plan that the town has, this area is a high growth area with regards to the density that needs to be there in order to support the retail that's going to be there and the restaurants and whatnot. Is it the best situation, the best scenario with regards to the traffic? Probably not. I'm not a traffic engineer. I don't propose to know any of the numbers or understand those numbers. I can take a look at the ability that this applicant could have with regards to private property rights and be able to develop to an extent where they started with over 800 units or now under 300 units. They could go even higher on this piece of property that they're looking at. I commend the applicant for trying to work with the community and with the HOA to come up with a solution and a way to work through this. I think that this piece of property is very well laid out. I would agree with the parking aspect of it with regards to the east and west and where people are going to park and have to walk. I don't know that there's a way around that. But with regards to the way that this development has come to fruition through the applicant's ability to work with staff, I would support this property and this plan. So,
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Simon. Anyone else? Commissioner Davis?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I come down very similarly to Commissioner Simon. I've come a long way on this project from when we first saw it months ago, I guess, is when we first started seeing this. And as far as a contributor to the downtown, I feel like this is going to be something that's much better for that. Related to the uses that are out there, my biggest concern is the existing industrial subdivision to the south. I don't think putting single family next to that is a good idea, so I don't like that original plan because I don't think having home ownership adjacent to that industrial is a good idea. I don't love the views those people are going to have into that. I feel like they've mitigated it somewhat with that buffer. I also feel like people who move in there can see that's already there, so they can already see the impact that that has. But I do think this is a better fit for the neighborhood southwest of it than that existing industrial. So I think this is moving in a better direction for the area. I don't know that that existing industrial subdivision will ever go away. Maybe some of the uses will change and become a little less intense at some point, but I think this is progressing in a better way. I think you could end up with some industrial user that has a high traffic use up there. I think the streets were built to accommodate many possible uses in the area. I do think continuing to explore ways to mitigate traffic on Aviary Way is something I would support, but I definitely want to support our fire and medical and police to be able to have accurate or quick response times for these. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm in support of this project as well. I think that they've come a long way. I appreciate that they adjusted the parking to meet that, and I think the open space is mitigated by the fact that there will be new open space to the north. So, and I'm not terribly concerned that, I mean, I think that open space adjacent to that's going to be a good addition for the town and for this use adjacent to it. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Anyone else? No? Commissioner Fay, please.
So I think the project is relatively straightforward, and it meets almost all the standards. The emergency access, I mean, that's a fire code requirement. The 2 points of access, that's an international fire code, whatever, I think. In addition to in-city code, I think. So I don't think any stipulation is needed. I think it's a requirement that's already in code. Am I mistaken, staff? That requirement's out there regardless, right? Well, we don't need to answer that right now. If it's not out there, we may need to grapple with that, but I think it is out there, and I don't think we need to address it and just let the applicant and staff work that one out as a requirement.
Hi, Commissioner Fay. So it is a requirement, like you're explaining, but per our engineering team, we would like to keep it in as a condition, just as an extra step, so that nothing happens down the road to change the fact that we need them to have a secondary access.
So we've got
Just
a stipulation that says you will do the thing that you have to do under the
Yes.
code anyway. Okay. I guess there's no harm in it. It's not the way I usually operate, but okay. Belt and suspenders, good to go. And then I've already spoken on as to the rest of it. You know, most of the aesthetics or are you next to an industrial or are you too near the railroad? To me, that's a that's an economic decision that the applicant's gonna have to make. If the railroad's too loud, they won't be able to rent the places for as much, and that's a, you know, my view is if you end up doing great and you make a fortune, good for you, go buy the Harley, and if you lose your shirt, I'll pat you on the back and say, sorry, dude, you swung big, but that to me is that's a self-interest, capitalism, free market, freedom, go team, go. Anyway, I'm in favor of the project.
No, I'm sorry, sir, we already closed the public hearing. All right, any other commissioners? No? I guess as far as my concern is, when we look at the land use cases before us, and it's not design review, it's just land use tonight, so the general plan and the zoning. Similar to what Commissioner Simon and Davis said, when we first saw this in study session, it was almost a non-starter. I mean, the unit counts, the traffic, any deviations, we've been pretty steadfast in knowing that was that. That's always been my concern. I definitely understand the residents' concern, especially when we start talking the high density zoning classification. That was my concern because when we talk about the actual density and we actually want kind of an orderly transition between these uses, and to go to MF high, which is our highest density, however, the applicant has continuously revised that down. And my initial thought was, well, maybe we want to look at a medium family or multifamily medium. But honestly, they've come so far down on the density count on the high end, it's really just a couple of units, even if they went MF medium, especially if they have to look at providing the additional emergency access as well. So that was my main concern. I agree with Commissioner Davis. I think whatever we have to do to take a look at, and I trust the town's engineering traffic engineering staff of if we can mitigate whatever we can on Aviary Way. But my concerns have been addressed. I understand the neighbors' concerns, but I think the street capacity can handle it, and the density is probably right there where we've requested the applicant to bring it, and especially keeping all that parking on site. I think the overflow parking, if there's no parking on Neely, could present a challenge, but as long as they can park it on site per code, that's what we have to go with. So with that, does anyone have any other comments? Okay, Commissioner Everett.
All right, so I do have hesitation on this, I'm sorry. I think a lot of what there's a connection to downtown. And other than it being close as the bird flies, or as the crow flies, as they say, to downtown, I don't know, to me, that density when you're right in the middle of downtown, that makes sense. It's close, but there's not really that pedestrian connectivity in my mind. Like, I mean, yes, you can walk there, but if people have to walk more than like a quarter mile, they typically don't do it. It doesn't feel like it's that connected to downtown in my mind. And then, yeah, there are externalities in my mind too, where, yes, you take that capitalistic risk, which I'm in favor of, but at the same time, that risk fails, you aren't able to rent it out, does it become a slum? Yeah, I don't know if that's, anyway. And then one of the other concerns I have too is that in a lot of other places, we're trying to get other land rezoned to industrial, but then we're abandoning the industrial we have. So some of that just doesn't add up to me. That's just some of my concerns.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Commissioner Everett. Anyone else? If not, I will entertain a motion if someone wants to bring one forward. And we would need the separate motions for the GP case and the zoning case as well.
Vice Chairman Bianchi, I would make the motion to approve GP 22-16 Lumberyard as written for the minor general plan amendment.
Thank you, Commissioner Fay. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Okay, so I've got a motion for approval by Commissioner Fay, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Please vote.
Well, that was fast.
Okay, we've all voted? Okay. Motion carries 6 with 1 abstaining, is that correct? You're abstaining, Commissioner Everett? Okay. So, just for the record, so you were abstaining?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's okay if you vote against. It's okay. We
You
do
can
that.
vote
We get
against,
6-1s
sure.
all the time up here. If you
wanna
accidentally push the
abstain, or
wrong
do you
button, I
wanna
do that
vote?
all the time.
Okay. So he's going to change that vote, so it's going to pass 6-1 with Commissioner Everett voting no. All right. Do we want to take a stab at a motion for the zoning case?
Yes, Vice Chairman Bianchi, I'd like to make a motion to approve zoning case Z22-16, request to rezone the lumberyard, item 8,
Subject to the conditions, of course.
subject to blah, 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 blah.
Okay, do I have a second?
I will second that.
Okay. So I've got a motion for approval by Commissioner Fay, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Please vote. Okay. So if that's correct, the motion passes 6-1. All right? Is that Commissioner Everett voting no? All right. With that, thank you, everyone. Thank you to the public. As far as next steps in this process, it will go to town council as well. So, sir, if you had additional follow-ups or responses, it will go to town council for consideration next, and it will also come back to us for design review as well. So we'll look at the site there. So there are a couple more opportunities if you have additional feedback. So thank you all for coming out. All right, next up is administrative items, and that would be the Planning Commission minutes and study session and regular meeting for March 6th. I think the only question I had on that would be under one of the cases, it called out Adam Ball, and it should be Adam Baugh who spoke tonight, so B-A-U-G-H. Is there any other changes anybody had? With that, does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written with the one exception to the change in Mr. Ball's name.
Okay, thank you.
I'd
Got a
second that.
All right, so I've got a motion for approval by Commissioner Simon, seconded by Commissioner Fay. Please vote. All right, carries unanimously, 7-0. All right, next item is communications, and to our vice mayor, I apologize profusely because I passed over you earlier. So please accept my apologies. With that, do we have a report from our council liaison on current events?
And that's fine, Mr. Chairman. You did wonderful. And just a couple of items. In the springtime, we traditionally have a lot of activities that are going on in the town, and I draw your attention to the website to check out some of the things that are happening in the town. Probably the most significant is the Global Village Festival, which is coming up, I believe it's this Saturday. We have some things going on in the Heritage District. There's some artwork, and Sydney might know more about this artwork than I know about it, but there's some artwork that is going to be placed in the downtown for a month. And one of those pieces looks like a peeled banana, I think, and is seating, and there's a mushroom, I think, that has music that plays. Is that right, Sydney? And the music is from our own symphony from Gilbert that can be played. And I think that's all located over by Oso. Is that right? Right by Oso. The other is, last night at the council meeting, we had our chairman of the Redevelopment Commission is proposing that the second oldest building in the town, which is the Clara Home, which is also known as Bergey's, which has been sold, that there's an effort to save that building now and move it to the museum property at HD South or some other alternative. And they're kind of scrambling to do that because I think it's scheduled for demolition in a few weeks. So if you're interested in contributing to that, you might want to check that out. I don't know if it's on the website at HD South. Jan, do you know? It's on the website. But that's certainly something that you may want to check out also. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Vice Mayor. Good updates. Report from the chairman and members of the Commission on Current Events. I have nothing. Do any other? Mr. Commissioner Simon,
I
please.
do have one tomorrow night at Park University from 6 to 8 is Gilbert Talks, Gilbert Talk 14, and it is it's crime in the second safest city. Is Gilbert really safe? If you have not been to a Gilbert Talks, I encourage you to come. I think we still have some spaces available. We've got room for 100, and last I heard, we were just over 80 registrants. So they're great events, and we're having the chief will be there. Chief of Police will be there. We've got Maricopa County there. We've got school board there. So it'll be a great event.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none. Report from the planning service managers on current events. Eva, anything for us?
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. Just to inform you that we now have 2 vacancies in the Planning Division with the departure of Noah Schumerth and Samantha Novotny yesterday. So we'll be interviewing this month, and hopefully you'll see 1 or 2 new faces in the near future.
Okay, very good. Thank you. All right, if there's nothing further, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I will move to adjourn.
Okay, very good. We have a second. Nobody wants a second? You
I'll
guys want to
second.
stay here all night?
I'll
You're that
second.
happy? All right. Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Davis, seconded by Commissioner Gage. All those in favor, please vote. That we are united on. It passes unanimously. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
I abstained. Because the buttons are confusing.